automotive world has some of the most passionate people on the planet. There's artists, builders, and craftsmen, and they all have a story to tell. I'm Brad King, and this is Stories in Steel. On this episode, we sit down with car builder extraordinaire Dave Kindig. Growing up with a single mother in a challenging environment, he fought and pushed his way to the top of the hot rodding mountain. And now that he's there, he has no plans of leaving anytime soon. So Dave, you're my first interview in Utah. How about that? I stretched out. I did Canada. I've done Oregon. I went through Washington to get to Canada. Got Idaho, but I've never done Utah.
Huh.
So,
well, you've been missing out.
There we go.
It's a great hotbed for hot rodding.
Right.
So, yeah, a lot of people think that the Bonneville Salt Flats belong in are in California. They're actually in Utah.
They're here. They're here. That's one of my favorite places.
Yeah,
so yes,
it's like another planet.
So, you've been doing this. I'm assuming you've been doing this a long time. You've made a name for yourself. When did you start with cars? Did you start with Hot Wheels models? What was your
Yeah, so when I was the ripe age of around 5,
okay.
I wanted to be a designer of insects because I used to catch grasshoppers and praying mantises and stuff in my backyard, and I wanted to design and make them even cooler and whatever. And my mom kind of let me know that you can't really do that. So I went to my second love, which was cars.
Design.
No kidding.
You could have been a mad scientist.
I know, right?
It kind of gone so sideways.
If I could have pulled it off, it would have been awesome at the time.
Right.
But I really did have a love for both insects and cars, and so I basically Hot Wheels, Legos, plastic model cars. But I was very impatient as a kid. I wouldn't wait for the glue to dry. And once the car was done, I was so overly active with my imagination. I'd take parts off of one car sitting in the windowsill that I just had finished and put them on the next car, cut the roof off, do it on the next car.
Well, it's wet.
And so my impatience, though, really started getting the best of me. I think I had more models hit the wall and onto the floor as opposed to just drawing.
Well, so who got you into it? Was it your dad, uncle?
No, I grew up with no dad, no older brothers. Basically, was self-taught. My mom was a wonderful woman, and she basically just nurtured me to stick to it and do that stuff. And basically watched her paint. She used to do landscapes and horses and that kind of stuff, and I wasn't really into that as much as I was into cars. But what I figured out is by looking at Lego instructions, all the blocks, I have vanishing points, and they're 3-dimensional. Well, I'm looking at those and I'm building those and I'm working with my hands. And I started putting the two together because also my Hot Wheels, I could look at the cars 3-dimensionally. I could see what the side view is, the front view, and then you mixed them. And I started kind of figuring that out. And so I really was very passionate about that. Legos, plastic model cars. Same thing, when you have the instructions, there's a line art of the car. You're going to take the body and you're going to move it this way and put this piece in. When you're looking at that, I was like going, okay, well, this makes more sense. So kind of like a coloring book, you had the black and white line art, and then you would color it. And I just kind of snowballed that until I started just drawing cars.
So you were playing with vanishing points as a kid. Mm-hmm. As a kid, you were already looking at this.
I was already doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing. Like in high school, I remember having to take drafting class. And I would do my border, and I'd put my nameplate and all of the project name and all that stuff, and I'd put Countach, and I'd draw the side view of a Countach, and I'd color it. And I handed it in. My teacher was like, Dave, this is really good, but this isn't what I asked for. And I was like, I know. And he could tell I just wasn't into it. And, I wasn't doing awesome in high school. I just was really bored. I think I actually was just, so bored that I just couldn't, I wasn't saying I'm advanced or smarter than everybody else by any stretch, but I just looked at the world in a different way. Growing up very poor, I had, a lot of great friends in every other high school but my own. I had good friends in my high school, don't get me wrong, but I was kind of an outgoing, get out there and go hang out with my friends instead of go to school and get an education. I dropped out when I was, after my junior year. Didn't get to go to my senior year. It was actually kind of a mix. My mom's boyfriend thought I was taking up too much of her welfare check. So he says either he goes or I go. And I wasn't doing great in high school. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll go ahead and split. So that was kind of a tough time in my life, but.
Yeah. So what did you do once you moved out? What did you?
Moved in with my grandmother. She put me into GED classes at the community college, and they don't call your house when you slept there, so I was just wasting her money. I finally quit that. Fast forward, just worked, got an apartment, met my wife. We moved in together, and she says, you should go and get your GED. And I said, okay. So I started taking night classes just to, the pre-prep for GED, and they said, Dave, you're doing just fine. Just go take the test. So I went in, I took the test, got my GED. Nice. Fast forward, my high school, it was so funny. I didn't go to my senior year, as I told you. And fast forwarded, I'm obviously skipping ahead in life. My English teacher that absolutely hated my guts, Don Johnson, walks in here from West High School. He's in charge of the alumni. And we had our TV show, and all this is great success has already happened.
So he walks into your shop.
He walks in the shop here, and they call me in my office. They said, there's a Mr. Don Johnson here. I said, from Miami Vice? He goes, no, it's your high school English teacher. He's in charge of the alumni. I was like, really? I looked down. He hadn't changed a bit.
And he must have talked
to him. I came down and talked to him. I said, he goes, we'd like to put you in the West High Hall of Fame. And I said, that's really cool. He says, yeah, we'd like you to come to the homecoming game this fall. And we'll present you an award and whatever at the homecoming game in halftime. I said, that's cool. I said, I'd be honored. I said, let me just tell you something. I said, I didn't graduate, right? He goes, oh, we don't care. I said, boy, you sure did back then. But it was just funny, growing up with nothing. And literally I went and did that. It was quite an honor. I went with my agent, Chris. My wife was there with me.
So we definitely stepped ahead there.
We definitely did.
Let's go back a little bit. So when you left school, you met the wife, and what were you doing? What were you doing for work? What was
just working in warehouses?
Okay,
just running a forklift, managing Northwest Motor Welding. So I was selling Clevite pistons and valves, and every once in a while I'd go out and stack all of the cylinder heads and stuff, getting them ready for cores. And across the parking lot was Jeff Holm at HPC, High Performance Coatings.
Okay.
And there was hot rods pulling in all the time, race car trailers, and he'd always borrow my forklift. He was, I'm going to jokingly say, he was too cheap to buy his own forklift at the time. So I was always over there doing that, and I was just so enthralled because I was so into cars. I had a chopped Volkswagen, in the parking lot right across from where he was. And I said, Jeff, when are you going to give me a job? I'd love to work here. And he says, well, I'm actually going to be looking for somebody. I said, okay. Well, he says, give me about a month. And he says, I'll bring you in. I said, how much you going to pay me? He told me, and I was like, okay. So it was only a couple of days later, I'm working with all these old cowboys, and they were being real jerks to me. And finally I was like, complaining about how I was stacking cylinder heads were going for cores. And finally I was like, hey, you know what? Stacking yourself, I quit. I was unemployed for about 20 minutes. I went to the Circle K, bought a big gulp, came back, went across the parking lot, and I said, hey, Jeff, I quit my job. I said, when can I start? He goes, oh, I wasn't really expecting you, so he got me for $2 less an hour. That's,
Nice.
So anyway, I started the next day. And, I worked for Jeff for 8.5 years. I started at the very bottom. I learned how to do every aspect, including making the coatings, the ceramic coatings, and got into marketing, started streamlining my process here in Salt Lake, which was the corporate office. Spent some time in Connecticut at the other facility, helped them streamline and get organized. And same with Oklahoma City. And then I had an opportunity to go to Arizona, Speed Marine out in Chandler. They had a brand new facility out there. Jim Schaffner did, and we put an HPC up there. So I
you were
spent some time.
You were kind
so
of
I kind of moving around, even though I was married and had had a second kid on his way. Bailey was my first kid. She was born in '96.
Okay.
And started my business in '99, and that's when Drew was born. And I had, we're kind of skipping a little bit here, but
to go from working on powder coating stuff to going, I'm going to build hot rods.
So I was into Volkswagens, and on the side I was in Salt City air coolers. And so I was watching other people work on cars. I watched somebody weld, and I figured out how to weld. I watched somebody doing body work. I learned how to do that from watching other people.
Okay.
I learned how to spray, how to do graphics, all that kind of stuff. So I was actually doing pretty good at that. Also at the same time, I was just as a hobby, my wife and I didn't have a lot of money. So we'd rent movies from Video Verns, and we'd go to, we'd just sit at home and watch videos, and I'd sit there and draw a car. Well, I ended up hanging those up in my office at HPC. The Maricruz came through, riding custom Maricruz, Boyd Coddington, Chip Foose was still working for him, Jim Schaffner, Ed Capon, which was good guys. Ed was still working at Arizona Speed Marine, and Ed's sitting there eating barbecue brisket in my shipping area, and he looks through the office window and he says, Dave, who does those drawings? I said, those are mine. He goes, those are pretty good. You ever thought about doing those for magazines? I said, man, I've never had an opportunity. And it was a couple of weeks later, he commissioned me to do a Camaro for him. And that was seen in the Super Chevy and Chevy High Performance. Did another rendering for Brian Pride, which is one of their master fabricators at Arizona Speed Marine. And his got featured. And then Jim Schaffner, that owned Arizona Speed Marine, commissioned me to design the Chevy Silverados, 1999 Silverados ASM edition. And it had Budnick wheels, Trends billets.
So you're designing stuff
West
for other people long before you ever had your shop going on. I think that's pretty cool.
So pretty soon, everybody thought I was a big deal designer in Utah. Everybody thought I was a big deal designer outside of Utah, and it just snowballed. Well, pretty soon, I can make $600 drawing a car in my garage in one night. Right. I was making that working almost 60 hours a week for HPC. And I was like, I kept telling my wife, I was like, I need to quit. I want to just do this for a living. I have enough work right now to make three months worth of income.
Right.
Other than we're going to lose our insurance and everything else. So there I am, being the smart guy that I am. I've got 2 young kids, 2 car payments, a house payment, and I'm going to quit my job and lose my insurance and start my business, cashing my 401k after 8.5 years for $4,800. And that's what I did. She says, as long as the insurance picks up the bill for Drew, you can quit. And I was like, okay. So the insurance paid for Drew, and I gave my 2 weeks notice and started my business out of my garage in June of 99. I outgrew my garage by September of 99, moved into the building we're in right now.
Wow. So how was it when you parted ways? Was it a good thing, or was he mad that you were leaving, or was he okay, or going, hey? No, how did that work? I mean, 8 years is a long time.
Yeah, no, and I think that, anytime you have an employee that's a major part of your operation, I know certainly I have those type of people here that if I lost them, I'd be, kind of screwed for a while. And no, Jeff was actually pretty cool. He was pretty cool, and he understood. I had a dream. I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
You weren't competing with him. It wasn't like you were open a.
No, like, I wasn't doing anything
it's
like
not the same thing.
Yeah, and I had all the respect in the world for him, and he showed me the world. I'd never been on a plane until I worked for Jeff. My wife hadn't either, and I had hardly even been out of the state. And so he showed me the world. Really, I mean, I got a lot of opportunities to go to the SEMA show, to go to car shows back east, to travel and take care of the other facilities for him and get them ramped up. And so, like I say, I learned very early how to work very hard, and I knew also how to recognize the rewards from that and to make things work and to be successful. So
how long were you a one-man show?
Not long. I started with 3 employees right out the gate.
Really? Mm-hmm. You had that much work?
Yeah. And then I lost it all when I got here into the new building. I moved into this building. I was involved with a stereo shop that was having me build a CES vehicle. For the electronics.
Right.
And it was all Macintosh stuff. And I was building this 4x4 single cab, and I stretched the door shells, or the door skins rather, to the back of the cab. Got rid of the cap corners.
Okay.
Made a trick, right?
That's kind of cool.
Well, the guy that was doing the upholstery is not Justin, my upholsterer now, but was a different guy when he mentioned his name. He's seen how much money I was going to make. And he told the guy that I didn't know what I was doing, and then he ended up stealing the job from me. So as soon as I moved into having almost $5,000 a month overhead, lost the job. Didn't have a paint booth yet either. So there I am in business. I got 3 employees, and I told the guys, I said, hey guys, if you got any side jobs, you might want to bring them in right now. Otherwise, we're all going back to work for the man. And we would paint anything, landscape trucks, dragsters. The funny thing is first stuff that we was doing a lot of was race paint. But those guys will spend $20,000 for a set of cylinder heads, but they won't give you $200 for paint materials.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So they all wanted to get sponsored, and they would be like, hey man, will you sponsor my race car? And it's like, he goes, they'd say, I'm the fastest guy on the track. I'm like, really? Who's going to see my logo? The people in the pits that want to have a free paint job too.
Right.
So I got out of that business real quick. But yeah. There was a lot of lessons that I learned.
I still get hit up with that stuff. Hey, you want to sponsor me? No.
No, I'd rather sponsor me.
Right. So how long ago did you move in here then? When
we moved into this building in September of 99. Okay. And we moved into 4,500 square feet. There's 6 4,500 square foot suites. A couple of them are separated into 4,500s. We were there, second suite from the end to the west there, and we outgrew that. And I had signed a 5-year lease. We were about 2 years into it or so. And I called up the landlord and I said, hey, I'd like to cancel the lease and sign a new 5-year lease in the 9,000 square feet to the far east of the building, which is where we're at right now, this area. So that awesome. Was a great move. We moved in here. We had a great rapport with the landlord and with the owner of the company, or the building rather. And about every 4 years, we needed more space. Opened up another wall. There was the middle 9,000 square feet was available, so we moved into that. So we were then 18,000 square feet. About 4 years later, the rest of the building came open. I was like, we got to have it. And it was so funny as to look back when I first started a couple months into it. I remember poking my head out the front door of the one single suite and looking down the whole parking lot back and forth. And I'm like, man, wouldn't that be cool if I had this whole building one day filled with hot rods? I'm like, that's crazy. It'll never happen. So anyway, here we are. We have all 27,000 square feet. Had set up a way to be able to buy the building. At the time of Klein Daly's death, we were to be able to buy this building, and the proceeds from this one and 2 others were to go to Weston, Idaho, where he was born and raised, for college scholarships. My wife and I had been in the same house, our first house, for 23 years. And we're like, okay, this is cool. We're going to buy this building. This is going to be a big deal. 2015 is there. And we figured that Klein would be around for at least another 2 or 3, maybe 4 years. And our house got broken into, our original house, broken into for the 3rd time. And I told Charity, I said, that's it, let's move. Let's go find us a dream home. We got time. So we had a down payment for the building. We went and bought our dream home. 3 months later, Klein dies. So now we have to struggle to find the money to buy the building. Right. It wasn't that big of a deal, but we ended up being able to do it. And you know what they say about a big garage, you need more room. And as soon as you get more room, you will fill it and you're going to need more room again, right? So this 27,000 square feet that I was so proud of having, we outgrew it. In 2018, I bought another building 3 blocks from here, another 10,000 square feet. Kevin's been here since day one. We've been good friends for a very long time, and that's a very integral part of my business, is having great employees, and they're like family. Kevin and I have been together 29 years, I think. We worked together at HPC. We met each other in the back of the local car shows. He was into mini trucks, and I was into Volkswagen. So we are the riffraff, if you will.
So I'm going to go back again. You got a pretty fast story here. So
it's all over.
You got this. You moved in. I mean, you got out of the garage. You moved in here. What was your? You had to have some goals of what you wanted to do. I mean, did you want to build hot rods, pickups? You're doing Volkswagens. What was it? Or you just wanted to do everything? I mean, what did you want to do?
So the only Volkswagens at the time, because Volkswagens, most of the time, Volkswagens aren't big money makers by any stretch. I've made good money on Volkswagens, but that was something that came further into my career. My Volkswagen early days, I mean, geez, you'd be lucky to get $10,000 out of somebody to restore a car.
Right.
And at that time, $10,000 is probably a little bit more on the lines of a '69 Camaro restoration. I mean, there just wasn't a lot of money in it. But we made do. We made good decisions, made fast moves, and learned how to be efficient. So I was doing anything that come in the door. It wasn't just Volkswagen.
It didn't matter. Whatever you put your hands on.
It didn't even matter what it was, and we just kept going and kept raising our prices, kept getting better at what we did, kept expanding our offerings. Because when I first started, we were doing suspensions, body and paint, graphics, that kind of stuff. Little bit of chop top stuff, but not a lot. Certainly, we didn't have anybody that knew how to wire. We didn't have anybody that knew how to do plumbing, chassis setup, that kind of stuff. Will Lockwood, good friend of mine, when he came back from Desert Storm, he worked with me at HPC for quite a few years. And I ran into him fast forward when I was in business for about 3 years. And I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm just building scale remote control cars out of my garage. I said, you making any money? He goes, no. So why don't you come and work for me? And that was one of the beginnings of expanding our ability.
I like how everybody came from HPC.
I was like, that was a big deal for me. I got to know so many people in the industry, outside of here. I knew Troy Chapania because I was doing his exhaust coatings. I knew Boyd Coddington. I was doing his exhaust coatings.
Yeah, you guys were it. I mean, that was...
HPC was it was HPC, and Jet Hot was our competitor, the evil competitor. So, it was like, we got to be the best, period, across the block. So, yep.
That's awesome.
It's crazy. And by working for a corporation like that, it was very, very much corporate. Even though it was a smaller corporation, it was,
right.
It was one of those things where we wanted to make sure that, that we looked professional all the time. And so I kind of brought that
was gonna say,
even though I've got a hot rod shop.
I was going to say, you brought that attitude with you, going, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be as nice as we can make
Right.
it. It's presented that same,
Exactly.
obviously
when you
kept
walk through my hot rod shop, 27,000 square feet, the place is actually very well organized, very clean, and we can move through a lot of cars, and we know where everything's at. We've learned to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes across the board. So we've actually done pretty good by setting it up. It's very hard to lose something here.
So did you have any goals when you first just get them done and get them out the door? Or were you looking at Detroit or Pomona? Were you looking at any of the big shows going, I want to take something there? Just
When you have, so the way I've based my entire life is setting goals. And as you get close to making those goals, you need to have already set other goals. And so, yeah, I mean, always, learning about the Riddler back when I was at HBC. And I was always, we'd always watch and see who was winning the Riddler that year. We'd be watching if we're at the Boise Roast show earlier on, where we just had more of like cruise night style cars, or, higher end ones, but they were still not to this, degree. And we would always watch to see what was happening. We did compete. We got an interior award for the Amber with Wild Bill's 32 that Justin Stevens had done at JS Custom. He did the upholstery, and that's what won the award. We were up against some pretty heavy hitters that year. And, and I always wanted to go to the Riddler. I had done a couple of designs. I did the Kraken for Scott Burton.
okay.
That was built by Smitty's, and I just developed the colors, designed the car, designed the interior, did wheels, tires, the interior. That was all us, and some airbag stuff. The car got a grade 8, which was awesome. And then not too long ago, did a pickup. It was basically a suburban turn truck, almost like the Phantom Fleece that we did.
Right.
And when we did that design, that was 10 years of the build. But I always said, if I ever had the opportunity to build something, I'm not going there to get a grade 8. I'm literally going there to win the Riddler. I'm not going to just try and get a grade 8 because I'd already got a couple of designs that were grade 8.
I just love the fact that you were designing for other people. Just you still had your foot in the door, even though it wasn't here.
Exactly.
You still had your foot in the door.
Yeah, I was getting my foot in the door, which was really cool. It was getting my name out there, which was really cool. But again, I wasn't in charge of the build. I didn't have control over the logistics, the quality, all of the design. I mean, I had a lot of influence in a lot of it. But it was one of those things where if I ever had the opportunity, like I said, I'm going there to kick the door down. I didn't want to just get a grade 8. So when Dave Maxwell commissioned me to build him a car, he didn't even know what he wanted. He goes, I'm sure you got some ideas. And I said, I always have ideas.
Was that the vet?
Yeah, 12 Air.
So that was your first entry into doing that.
Mm-hmm. I checked every box.
That's how you do it, man. That's how you do it.
But if you have to look at it backwards, you can have the dream, but if you don't have the equipment, you don't have the team, you don't have the dream, the experience, the knowledge, you get a grade 8 maybe at best. But to win the Riddler is something that has always been very coveted for me and all my guys. We all wanted to win that.
Right.
And when we had the opportunity, it was like, we're not going to be in a big rush. We took 4.5 years to build the car. It actually started and then COVID hit. So a lot of things kind of dragged on. In fact, we were a year behind on getting the engine from Australia.
So while that's going on, was there any other crazy build? I mean, yeah, you're going this one, we're taking it to Detroit, we're taking it to Cobo Hall, we're going after. Was there anything else that you were working on that was just as nuts going, the guys are doing it, or it takes a special client to do something like that?
Well, I was creating
throwing money at you,
Sure.
go nuts.
Sure. Well, no. Hand in hand with the Riddler at the same time. If you look at the time frame, I was also creating a car company. The CF1 program. So, carbon fiber bodies, roadster shop chassis, Lingenfelter engines. I mean, basically all of the great components that we've been using for years, and we've proven that the reliability was there and that the quality was there. So I was literally in the middle of creating a car company, which is now licensed by the National Highway Travel Safety Board. I'm generating 17-digit 1953 replica numbers, which is great. So these cars can be licensed anywhere.
So what brought that on?
I wanted to build something that could be repeated over and over again, because right now with 43 employees, you're trying to find masters of every aspect of the car, which are very hard to find anymore. That's always been one of our biggest problems. Is it's easy to dream it up and it's actually easy to sell it at this point. The hardest part is to accomplish it, because trying to find the talent. I've got very talented people. I could use almost double what I have right now.
Wow.
And that's what that's why you end up with a 6 to 8 year backlog, and you just can't keep up. the car company, I'm turning those cars in about 4 months, you know, of total time. Obviously, there's a little bit of span of time of the 4 months actual labor, but building a CF1 in 4 months is quite a bit different than a 12 to 14 month project building a Camaro or, you know, something else that's built turnkey.
And the drivers, you build them to drive, or just to look good in the living room?
Everything. No. So back in the day, we were building a lot of show cars, you know, very showy and not necessarily, you know, thought through to be driven. And, you know, things have changed quite a bit. I mean, you got to think about it this way. In 26 years, the first years, I was doing graphics, like 30 color graphics, pinstriped, airbrushed, leopard skin, and West Coast style, you know, slashes all over the place and scallops and stuff. And flame jobs were big time here. I was doing a lot of flames, a lot of fade jobs that way. And things have changed. I mean, the street rods, I was building tons of street rods. We don't have any street rods going right now.
Really?
No, that whole crew is kind of dropped off the planet. You know, the baby boomers that were building the 32s and the 40 Fords and, you know, the classic trucks, those people have kind of moved on, and which is kind of sad because they're a lot of fun to build. They're a lot of fun to drive. Right. You can pick them up on pennies on the dollar now. It's so funny. In 26 years, it's like the story just bounces all over the place because there's been so many great accomplishments and goals that we had set and things that you could only wish for, you know, quietly. You never tell the public, oh, I hope I just run into a whole fleet of millionaires and billionaires, because then I can just build whatever I want and just be creative and not have to worry about a budget or a time frame. And I hate to say it, but that is the reality. And it's been great.
Yeah.
Because we can now just get creative. I don't have to, it's the awkward part is usually at the very beginning, you know, get kind of a ballpark that we're going to land in. I'm time and materials. Anybody that's building a good car right now, they're not giving you a total price on it, especially on a custom build. Time and materials, trust your builder, and then we just get creative. And we build something that they know that, you know, that likely the car's going to sell for more than what they paid for.
They come here because they already know what you're capable of doing. So it's not like, well, do you think you can handle it? They already know you can handle it. That's why they're standing in your front door. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, how does this work? This is kind of what I like for cars. What are you thinking? And you know, they're going to hit you up and say, well, what about this? Oh, I didn't think about that. And, you know,
but that is always the funnest part of that too, is being able to sit down with somebody. I'm creating the dream car for you, and so I want to know what you like, and I'm going to make sure that we're not putting, you know, boobs on a bull. We want to make sure that we're doing it right. You know, that we're going to make something that's going to be classic for 30 years, not a flash in the pan.
So do you draw it up for them when you first do? I mean, is that something you do?
Every single car gets designed before my guys even touch it, because the guys that I have in the back, basically that whole group of people can just look at my rendering and go, this is what we're building. This is the theme. I'm not telling them exactly where to put the seams in the engine bay necessarily.
Well, sure.
They can figure that part out, but they now have a theme and a feel of what the car's going to look like, and they know exactly what. Exactly. And if they have ideas, I'm an open door. I want creativity. I want people to not just come to work and just feel like they just got to make, you know, French fries and that's all they're going to do.
So do you make a copy for the customer so he can take it home and go ha ha ha?
All the originals are upstairs in a waterproof, fireproof cabinet.
All right. Yep. That's cool. That's cool that you can present that to the customer before you start. Yeah. This is what we're going to build.
Well, it just guarantees the sell. You know what I'm going to do for you because I just showed you what I'm going to do. And when we're talking about developing the idea and the theme of the build, within 5 minutes, I'm already driving that car up and down the street in my mind. You know, I know what the contrast from interior to exterior. I know the stance, the wheels, the smell, the design. You know, the wheels, everything about the car. I'm already imagining it, and so being able to visualize that for the customer by putting it on a piece of paper and showing them what the car's going to look like. I mean, that's the easiest sell, and it's so much fun for me because now I get excited about it. My guys get excited about it. And the customer's excited about it. So everybody's pumped up and we know exactly what we're doing.
What I like about it is it's not a third-party deal. There's lots of designers.
There's some great designers, absolutely.
But they are a third party. Mm-hmm. You know, the builder's having to talk to them and relay, and it's like, well, he kind of wants to make this change. You can do that on the fly while the guy's sitting there talking to you going, man, I don't really like the door handles of this particular car. Can we change? You're talking about that. And you kind of, you know, you're taking notes, whatever, and it's like, give me a week, you know, or give me a couple of days and I'll draw this thing up for you and we'll go over it and we'll get this thing happening here. So,
and that's by far, I think, one of the biggest advantages for us is that we've always had the ability to show them what the car's going to look like before we do it. And we've always got room to make changes. You know, it was funny as the 12 Air car, that car originally was going to be platinum with a red interior. And as we got closer and closer, because again, you remember, I was only given one opportunity at this point to build a car to compete for the Riddler. Well, I only got one shot to win, right? At least right now. And is that car going to stand out enough? I don't know. I don't think so. And I didn't second guess myself. I basically convinced myself that the car needed to be red. I called up Dave and he goes, Dave, I trust you. Do whatever you want.
So that would be a big one. It's like, I know we talked about this, but I
already had the rendering to it that was done in platinum with a red interior. And I said, I think we need to paint this car red. And he goes, do whatever you want, Dave. I said, okay.
You did and I wish I could think of what it was. It was this big, one of the first things I'd seen that you had worked on.
It's got to be a GM Futureliner.
It was the Futureliner.
Yep.
Thank you. There you go. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking up to that. It was the first time I'd heard your name, and I'd been around a lot of the heavy hitters. So I already got an expectation of what I want to see. And a friend of mine walking around and said, who built this bus? And he goes, this guy in Salt Lake City. And I went, well, he's really good. So we kind of climbed all over it, and you caught me off guard.
We've had a lot of great successes with some big builds. It's funny is the GM Futureliner was actually the reason that we got the TV show, or one of the big parts of the reasons that we got the TV show. We put out a media blitz that we were getting the opportunity to build a GM Futureliner number 3 for Rick White, which is a local guy here. It was a big software company, Fusion.io, and he had sold for quite a few, a couple billion. And wanted us to basically build a GM Futureliner. We actually wanted to customize it, which I was all about. So I had never seen one of those, never even heard of the Parade of Progress until then. Obviously getting a lot of research. We decided not to modify and customize it. We decided to restore it. Number 3 was Power for the Air Age, which was the coolest one of all, because it had a jet engine cutaway inside the compartment of the side, and 2 had an aliapod and a thrust drag jet thing that would bounce back and forth. You could thrust and drag, and we basically restored it all back to original. It's the only one that's ever been restored perfectly back to original.
So you said that was kind of the lead in for the show. So who saw it? I mean, how did that even come about?
So what happened is we were getting the opportunity to build this, and we put out a media blitz basically to different networks and magazines and whatever. And basically it came across the desk of Bob Scanlon and David Lee at Velocity Channel, which they used to be Speed Channel and Speed Vision.
Right.
And when they started Velocity, well, this happened across, and it was like, okay, we already know this kid, because I had 13 other episodes of My Classic Car, Car Crazy, Hot Rod Television, and SEMA coverage. I was always a guest on somebody else's show, didn't have my own yet. And so they were familiar with our builds, and they were like, okay, this kid's building all these high-end hot rods. What the hell is he doing with a GM Futureliner? So they called me up and they said, hey, we're kind of interested. We're familiar with your shop and some of your builds. We'd like to maybe send somebody down to do a sizzle reel and talk about maybe doing a series on this build. And I was like, cool. So I'm thinking it's going to be like a 3-part or something, whatever.
Right.
They sent Fisher Productions down from Park City. We do a sizzle reel. It's about 7 minutes long. And they love the layout of the shop with all the mezzanines, great camera views. They love the way that we all kind of click on each other and get along. And the equipment obviously was getting better and better, and obviously our abilities of building cars had already come up to a stage where we were pretty serious, I guess, at this point. And they said, man, we love it. We'd like to make put an offer together to do a series, a whole TV series, not just a series on the build of that. So it was kind of funny is in the beginning, you have 6,000 hours in one of these big builds, and they'd cut it down to 44 minutes with a B story. Like, you're wasting a ton of time. You're here filming for months, years, and you're going to cut it down to like 23 minutes of the Futureliner and then like 15 minutes of a Nomad build, the whole thing from start to finish. I'm like, you need to be doing like 3 episodes of some of these.
Right.
So that was kind of the part where the first 2 seasons were very short stories on big builds, including the Futureliner.
Now, how did that go as far as reaction go? Did people go, hey, how come you didn't tell more about that? And then they changed their mind, went, hey, maybe we should stretch this out? I mean, is that how that worked?
So no, it actually took proving ourselves that we were doing so much work and you guys are wasting a ton of footage that it wasn't until the 3rd season where I said, you got to be doing 2 episodes on these builds. You guys have 6,000 hours. You're gonna start doing 44 minutes this episode and 44 minutes the next episode, and maybe a B story in one of them. Let's capture more of the build. That's what people wanted to see.
Sure, absolutely.
As soon as you start concentrating on some stupid haircut thing in an episode, or throwing a wrench, or somebody's making some kind of crappy lunch for everybody. I mean, it's just, it's like, I get it, but if you want Honey Boo Boo, tune into Honey Boo Boo. If you want to see somebody build a really serious, over the top build.
Sadly, that's how all the TV shows went, just like that.
It is sad.
So you're obviously not done yet then. There's still crap going on in your noggin that going, I gotta try this.
Ask my wife, there's a lot of crap on my noggin.
I see you don't sleep very much, so the brain's always going. Mm-hmm. And you ever get up in the middle of the night and sketch things up, because it's on your brain, or do you just keep
No, but I just won't go back to sleep, so it's there when I'm thinking about it in the morning. No, I like I say, I have a very active imagination still. That's never changed. I think I've kind of honed a way to think about things and compartmentalize them and then pull them back. I don't hold back ideas for this build that I'm building for the next one. If I have an idea, I put it out there and run with it.
I would ask, it's like, okay, what do you have for goals? But you're doing your goals every day. It's like, well, okay, he's making door handles. He's building cars. He's he won the Riddler. So what are you looking for now?
Well, I haven't really.
What do you do? You get the TV thing. You've
done it. I'm doing a little bit of YouTube stuff right now. We're just starting. I've got my producer Nick Maher from when we did Bitchin Rides. He's a great friend. We've watched these guys all grow up, get married, have kids, and we worked for 12 and a half years together. So they're really a part of the team. And we're going to start doing some YouTube stuff. It'll be kind of quicker, funner, more accessible, more often. And this is going to be something that you're going to see stuff, probably every week, every 2 weeks. The car company stuff, that's my gateway drug. I want to build supercars.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yep. I've always had a passion about, supercars. I love mid-engine, low, wide, long, just, really smooth bodies. Being in business 26 years, building cars, you'd think I'd get sick of it.
A supercar, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. I've already designed a CF, I call it the CF X9. It's a mix between a C1 Corvette and a C8, so it's the 9. It's a mid-engine, fastback C1. It's pretty crazy. I've already sold it.
That's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be great. I got a wonderful client that has very good taste in cars. He's about a year younger than I am. It was funny. We hit it off right out the gate. He was sitting here and he's looking at the CF1s and he says, "You ever thought about doing one of these mid-engine?" I said, "You want to see the design?" He's, "Are you serious?" I showed him just the rough drafts and then I ended up doing another design for him. He says, "This is right after the GTO." I said, "Cool enough." So
you're going to start on here pretty quick.
Yeah. I've got some really cool projects and some great clients. I found that the amount of time and concentrating on the quality and design and taking care of our clients has got me the ability to get some very good clients, and which is just opening up the creativity and the quality. We're not concentrating on, budgets necessarily. I mean, obviously you got within reason, but once you have everything kind of moving and going forward, it's like, let's just have some fun. We'll build another one after this.
Well, you, sir, have had a busy life.
You can say that again.
Holy crap.
It's paid off, being a welfare kid off the wrong side of the tracks. It's funny, my wife and I just this last weekend celebrated 35 years together on Saturday, and Friday was our 33 years married. We missed it by one day, getting married 2 years after we'd met. Man, we sweated bullets. We've learned every mistake you could possibly make as a company owner, but we've survived it because we've been smart, we've been resilient. We've surrounded ourselves with great talent and great people. We wouldn't be here without all of those people that were working as if it was their own company. But this has been something that we've really tried to make sure that we try and hold on to as many people as we can for as long as we can. Because the more time you spend with them, the more trained they are. They know exactly what would Dave do. They don't even have to ask me half the time. I've got guys that have been here for 22 years, 24 years.
You walk back just to see how it's looking. You already know it's how it is. It's right. So how's it looking?
Well, they know what to expect from me, and I know what to expect from them. That's kind of the same way I look at my clients. A lot of the clients have multiple cars of ours. We've already been down the road once or twice. You already know exactly what to expect from me, and I know exactly, what to expect from you, and it's a good marriage. We just get in there and get creative.
Dave, thank you for sitting down with me, man. That was
Absolutely.
great, dude.
Thanks,
That was
Brad.
great. For the price of a pack of gum or a little tree air freshener, you can join the Stories in Steel Secret Circle. With your membership, you'll have access to the latest episode a week before it's available to the general public, including the exclusive unedited audio available as a podcast. You'll also have access to the past 2 seasons of unedited audio as I dig them up. We're still working on the Decoder Toe Ring and Secret Handshake.